silver jubilee of the World Sustainable Development Summit. For 25 years, WSDS has served as a space where ideas do not remain ideas. They are tested, debated, challenged, and often carried forward into real policy and real action. My name is Shireen Pandita. I'm an associate fellow at the TERI with the Transport and Urban Division, and it is truly a privilege to serve as your MC for this important plenary session this evening. We meet at a very critical moment of deep global complexity. Geopolitical fragmentation is rising, trust in institution is strained, climate risks are intensifying, and development pathways are diverging. But yet, here's the thing, multilateralism was built precisely for a moment like this. It was never meant to function only in times of stability. It was designed to hold when the world feels uncertain. This session, Multilateralism as a Force for Hope and Impact, asks a simple but profound question. Can global corporations still deliver? And if it can, what must change? Because hope without institutional reforms is rhetoric, and reform without trust is very fragile. Today's discussion will explore how we rebuild credibility, how we make governance more inclusive and equitable, and how solidarity moves from statement to implementation for people and for this planet. Before we proceed, I want to take a moment to share something meaningful. This year is a partnership with Cool the Globe. We can all take real climate action right here, right now. Download Cool the Globe app for free, join the WSDS community, and complete simple, sustainable tasks during the summit. The top 10 participants on the leaderboard will be recognized as our most sustainable delegate. If we are discussing multilateralism and shared responsibility inside this hall, this is one small, very small step. We embody it outside as well. Let us truly walk the talk together. Thank you. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we have an exceptional lineup of the global leaders and thinkers for this ministerial plenary on multilateralism as a force for hope and impact. The session will unfold in the following format. We'll be having an opening framing remark by our moderator, then ministerial addresses, followed by a keynote intervention, and then followed by an in-conversation segment among distinguished global voices. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce today's moderator, Mr. Manjeev Singh Puri, former Ambassador of India to the European Union and Distinguished Fellow with the TERI. Ambassador Puri brings a decade of diplomatic experience at the highest level of global governance. His understanding of multilateral negotiations, from climate diplomacy to geopolitical coordination, make him uniquely placed to guide the critical conversation. I would request all of you to give a huge round of applause, and I request Ambassador Puri to kindly take the dais. With this, I'd be introducing the distinguished guest speakers for the evening session. We have His Excellency Mr. Madhav Prasad Cholagain, Minister of Forest of Environment, Nepal. Can we have a huge round of applause for him as well? His Excellency Dr. Damika Patabendi, Minister of Environment, Sri Lanka. The clap should be on. It should keep going on. Thank you. Mr. Johann Flassbert, State Secretary, German Federal Minister for the Environment, Nature, Conservation, Nuclear Safety and Consumer Protection. His Excellency Dr. Muwayed Muhammad, Minister of State, Tourism and Environment, Maldives. His Excellency Mr. Indramani Pandey, Secretary General, BIMSTEC. His Excellency Mr. Mattis Frumeri, Climate Ambassador and Head of Delegation to UNFCCC, Swedish Minister of Climate and Enterprise. Professor Frank Bierman, Professor of Global Sustainable Governance, Utrecht University. Dr. Tom Rivet-Karnak, co-founder and president, Global Optimism. Ms. Patricia Fuller, President and Chief Executive Officer, International Institute of Sustainability Development. Dr. Kira Finke, Head of the Center for Climate and Foreign Policy, German Council on Foreign Relations. Last but not the least, Mr. Owais Sarmad, Vice Chair, Greenhouse Gas Protocol Steering Committee. I welcome all of you, and I really look forward to a wonderful conversation, and I request Ambassador Puri to take this forward. Thank you.
So, thank you very much, and thank you to all of you for being here today. So, I just want to start by telling you that we want to have you all riveted here for 2 hours. And I don't know what happened in the previous sessions, but I want to tell you that this session is about all of you. And I want you to think about what the speakers have to say and feel free to ask them some questions. We've used the past 5 minutes to tell them to expect that. Secondly, I want you all to understand that, if this room is partly not fully filled up, it's because this is a convening. And we in TERI are particularly happy that over 25 years, we've been able to set up a convening on climate, on sustainability and energy matters, which is absolutely unique to the Global South. And it's a convening which allows people to meet others who are involved with all of this. So you look at our Him Connect, the exhibition, the halls there, they're all buzzing with people. And this is what is the objective of all this. We want to bring global to India. We also want to bring India's local to the world. But we also want to energize both processes, the global process as well as the local actions. And thank you very much for all my friends who are sitting there. I see former secretaries to the Government of India, those who head major climate initiatives all over the world. Absolutely delighted to welcome all of you, sirs, your excellencies, my dear friends, all of you here. And I want to say you and to Patricia a particularly important thank you, because otherwise it would have looked like all these dark suits sitting here and trying to fix the world. That's not on. Thank you very much. Your presence is very important. Another just couple of words. Multilateralism. In some senses, isn't climate change something which is absolutely associated with multilateralism? And so the pushes and shoves that we are seeing in the world on multilateralism, people have every right to ask the question, will it not impact the climate negotiations and the entire climate scene set up here? Yesterday, when we inaugurated the WSDS, Mr. Nitin Desai, who's the chairman of TERI and who was one of the key persons in 1992, where the UNFCCC was negotiated and agreed upon, drew attention to the fact that yes, we haven't done enough. We need to do more. But if it is a fact which is known to everyone in the world, some may decry it, some may applaud it, some may do nothing, some may do a hell of a lot. The fact that it's uppermost in people's minds is because of the multilateral process, which has brought climate change to global discourse, including those who want to disparage it and call it whatever it is, hoax, etc. If it wasn't so, it wouldn't be the case. That's the importance. And secondly, why is it important? It's a global matter. As the young lady before me said, multilateralism is not just about huge conflicts and so on. It's also about ensuring that our future is a future that we can take forward, and it's something that our children can look forward to. For global issues, you need global solutions. And for something for which the solution is not instantly available, we need to be able to talk to each other and try and see what we can do about all of that. Now, I won't say much more. Of course, This is an area in which I've been committed. It's been an area of lifelong professional association, and I'm very delighted to see a fellow colleague from the Indian Foreign Service, Ambassador Indramani Pandey, who's the Secretary General of BIMSTEC, here with me, who's also been our ambassador in Geneva and is well known on each of these matters. I want to tell you the panel also includes somebody who was the Deputy Executive Secretary of UNFCCC, so Oves, a great welcome to you here also. We, of course, in this panel have something very interesting. We have three honorable ministers from our region, from South Asia, from Nepal, from the Maldives, and from Sri Lanka. Believe me, we are a vulnerable region. Sir, not only Nepal with its glaciers, not only Sri Lanka and Maldives with the potential of sea level rises and what it could do, and not only India with all of us, but we are countries which are worried, are vulnerable, and therefore feel that we must do action, i.e. local, but we count on global and global support. And I'm delighted to see these wonderful colleagues from Sweden and from Germany here, Mr. State Secretary. Yes, you are in the same hall where you were here many years back. Good to see you here, and all our colleagues here from important think tanks and institutions. Yours are the countries which have championed climate change and climate action. And whether we like it or not, whether we talk in terms of what's happening today or not, Europe was, and in my view, must remain a major climate champion and for action that we can do globally. Thank you very much for giving me this floor. I want to thank you all for being here. What we are going to do is, we're going to request the honorable ministers, because it's part of their duty, their obligations, and their office, to speak for about 5 minutes each and speak to us if they wish from the podium or from wherever they are. And then the rest of us, we will engage in conversation. Believe me, we will make them sit and also be part of the conversation. So if that holds well with all of you, may I please request by asking His Honorable Minister from Nepal to take the floor. And I'm saying that because I really have a particularly, not just soft corner, I have a relationship having been Ambassador of India to Nepal. Sir, you are also in the northernmost part of this subcontinent, and you have the right to tell us what is happening in our subcontinent. How do we bring in multilateralism? Let me also mention to you that the big regional organization here dealing with matters that concern us, ICMOD, is based in Kathmandu. So, Your Excellency, the floor is yours. I'm very happy and honored to have you with us. Yes, you can use that. Thank you.
Can I put this? Namaste. Distinguished moderator, Manjit Singh Puri, has very good connection with Nepal that we were talking. Always a pleasure to listen to him. My fellow ministers, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, namaste and good evening. I'd like to start by expressing my gratitude to the TERI for organizing and inviting me to this important summit. The title, Multilateralism as a Force for Hope. I also congratulate TERI on successfully hosting this significant Silver Jubilee occasion. Nepal has made significant progress towards sustainable development, particularly in areas such as infrastructure, green energy, education, health, and food security. However, we face many challenges ahead. Without the support of our development partners and neighbors, it would be difficult to advance on our own. Regional and global collaboration and cooperation are essential. Furthermore, the growing impacts of climate change are profoundly affecting Nepal and pose a major obstacle to our sustainable development efforts. In light of the significant challenges, international cooperation and multilateralism are essential for overcoming them. For Nepal and other countries, multilateralism should not only be viewed as a diplomatic concept, but also as a means to share responsibilities, offer support, collectively addressing regional and global issues. Now, I would like to answer some questions that that are before us. First is revitalizing multilateralism. from fragmentation to trust. How can we rebuild the trust? I think this can only be achieved by protecting and promoting global agreement and ensuring their implementation. The fragmentation arises from the broken promises. For example, international support for advancing the Sustainable Development Goal has significantly declined over the years. Similarly, the real commitment for development countries to provide the billion dollars per year in climate finance to developing countries has not been fulfilled either. Nepal needs to borrow more financial resources to fulfill our development needs and tackle climate change, pushing us towards unsustainable debt. This is both unjust and unfair for a least developed countries like us. The disparity between what is agreed in conference hall and the reality on ground contributes significantly to global mistrust. To revitalize multilateralism, we must shift from a culture of negotiation to one of engagement and action. The needs and priorities of people on the ground must be prioritized. So, couple of points that needs to be highlighted here are: the developed countries must fulfill the global commitment of allocating their GDPs in developing countries, as this will help advance our development needs. Similarly, the implementation of the climate finance for developing countries must materialize immediately. This funding is crucial for tackling the urgent impact of climate change. The other question that is in front of us is the institutional reform that we need. Excellencies, when we speak of inclusive and equitable governance, we must acknowledge that many of the current international rule-based order was written at the time when countries like mine were not on the table. Multilateralism is not failing because of the idea is flawed. It is failing because the architect excludes the voices of many, especially that of the poorer and less powerful countries. The international institution reform, including the United Nations, must recognize many dimensions such as inclusivity, interdependence, accountability, specific context, and human resources. Equity and fairness must be central pillar of institutional reform. Excellencies, I also want to highlight that Nepal is set to graduate from least developed country status in the end of 2026. Our development aspirations are both urgent and valid. However, we must navigate the challenging reality of our fragile Himalayan ecosystem. The primary challenge we face is finding a balance between rapid economic growth and environmental sustainability. We need to reform our institutions to address the needs and priorities of all nations, especially as we work toward transforming the economy into one that is sustainable, green, and equitable. It is essential to foster a sense of ownership to effectively transform both international and regional institutions. Lastly, thirdly, the important question that we have in front of us is: how do we turn hope into action for sustainable development? We do it by remembering what we share. In Nepal, we have a philosophy, Atiti Devo Bhava, same with the Indian subcontinent that we have. So the guest is God. However, we also hold a profound belief that we are all guests on this earth. For example, the air we breathe in Kathmandu is connected to the air in New Delhi. The water from the Himalayas flows into the river that sustain millions of people downstream. These rivers do not carry passport, and the air that brings monsoon clouds knows no borders. This interconnectedness is our great strength. Our shared identity should guide our collective actions. whether in protecting biodiversity or promoting fair trade. We are already practicing a form of people-centric regional multilateralism that we need to build upon. International cooperation must transform hope into action by moving beyond the perspective of providers and recipients and instead recognizing ourselves as cohabitants of a shared planet. International agreement and institutions must respect these principles. In conclusion, I want to emphasize that sustainable development and climate justice must be inclusive, equitable, and just for all nations. Nepal is prepared to collaborate and contribute our part in both regional and international forums. However, the hope we are discussing today will remain fragmented unless it is supported by the trust nurtured by equity and realized through concrete actions. We do not have the luxury of time. Our people are suffering, our mountains are melting, and ecosystems are devastated. We need a multilateral approach and international institutions that fulfill the hope of the people and planet. Thank you. Dhanyavad and good evening.
Thank you very much. Mr. Minister, thank you very much. And thank you for highlighting that all of us in the world, of course, vulnerable countries, need global cooperation. I dare say to everyone here that in the last few years, Nepal has stepped up tremendously in terms of being possibly a major supplier of fossil fuel-free electric power, powering this subcontinent. Sir, your country is really on the path of a major change, and a major change that will help us contain what people say is the principal cause of greenhouse gas warming that the world is saying. So thank you very much. I now turn to His Excellency, the Honorable Minister from Sri Lanka. Sir, you have the floor. We'd like to really hear from you, your perspectives and your country's views on the matter of multilateralism. You can speak from here or there, whatever you wish, sir. Thank you.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, ministers, esteemed delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor to address this distinguished gathering at the World Sustainable Development Summit under the timely theme of transformation, vision, voices, and values for sustainable development and climate action. I extend my sincere appreciation to the organizers and to the government and people of India for convening this important dialogue at a defining moment for our planet. Today, the world stands at a point of profound transformation, social, economic, environmental, and geopolitical. We are confronted with interconnected crises: climate change, biodiversity loss, pollution, inequality, debt, distress, and food insecurity. These challenges do not recognize borders. They transcend geography and politics. In such a time of uncertainty, multilateralism is not merely a diplomatic practice. It is a shared commitment to collective progress and global responsibility. It is the architecture of trust that binds nations together in pursuit of common solutions. And above all, multilateralism remains a powerful force for hope. Sri Lanka stands at a critical juncture in its climate journey. As a developing island nation in the Indian Ocean, we are increasingly experiencing climate-induced losses and damages. The growing frequency and intensity of floods, droughts, landslides, and cyclones are affecting infrastructure, livelihoods, ecosystems, food security. This, in fact, exerts significant pressure on public finances and hard-earned development gains. Yet, despite these challenges, Sri Lanka remains firmly committed to advancing sustainable development and climate action. Our updated national determined contributions, NDCs, submitted under the UNFCCC, outline ambitious mitigation and adaptation targets. Through our national adaptation plan, 2016-2025 provincial adaptation plans and sectoral climate frameworks, we are integrating resilience across water, agriculture, health, coastal management, and disaster risk reduction. According to Sri Lanka SDG Progress Report 2024, we are making strong progress on SDG 7, affordable and clean energy, and SDG 13, climate action. Nearly 100% of our population has access to electricity. Renewable energy accounts for approximately 50% of total electricity generation, with a target of 70% by 2030. We have strengthened SDG governance through a Sustainable Development Act and the Sustainable Development Council and the Sustainable Development Council. The National SDG data portal now provides comprehensive reporting across 159 indicators. These are important achievements. However, we are clear-eyed about challenges that remain. At current trajectory, many SDGs will not be fully achieved by 2030. Gaps persist in decent work, biodiversity protection, marine ecosystems, and economic resilience. Sri Lanka firmly believes that any state can exercise meaningful leadership in global environmental governance. At the United Nations Environmental Assembly, advanced a youth-centered resolution titled Enhancing a Meaningful Participation of Youth in Environmental Processes and in Environmental Education. This initiative reflects our conviction that sustainability cannot be achieved without empowering the next generation. Strengthening environmental literacy and participation equips young people to become informed leaders, innovators, and custodians of our planet. Investing in youth is an investment in long-term resilience and sustainable development. Regionally, Sri Lanka remains committed to strengthen the South Asia Cooperative Environment Programme, that is SASEP, as a principal intergovernmental platform for environmental collaborations in South Asia. In a region highly vulnerable to climate impacts, enhanced cooperation on marine pollution, disaster resilience, biodiversity conservation, and climate adaptation is essential. Through enhanced regional solidarity and coordinated action, we can better safeguard our shared ecosystems and build collective resilience. Excellencies, sustainability cannot be confined within national borders. Environment issues are inherently transboundary and cross-cutting. Air pollution, marine plastic waste, ocean acidification, and climate change connect us all in shared vulnerability and shared responsibility. First, we must reaffirm climate justice. Those who have contributed least to climate change often suffer its gravest consequences. Equity and intergenerational responsibility must guide global climate negotiations and financial architecture. Second, we must strengthen solidarity. Distress, economic instability, and climate vulnerability intersect in many developing countries. Financing for adaptation, loss and damage, and resilience building must be predictable, accessible, and adequate. Third, we must amplify the voices for vulnerable countries. Sri Lanka, as a climate vulnerable developing nation, brings lived experience to global negotiations, particularly on adaptation, loss and damage, and climate finance. Elevating those voices strengthens the legitimacy of effectiveness of multilateral outcomes. Fourth, we must invest in data, science, and innovation. Strengthen monitoring, reporting, and verification systems are crucial for translating ambition into measurable impact. Evidence-based policy making enhances accountability and builds trust in multilateral frameworks. The theme of this summit vision, voices, and values capture the essence of transformational leadership. Vision demands that we move beyond compliance driven planning towards a development pathway that integrates climate resilience, low carbon growth, and social inclusion. Voices reminds us that youth, women, marginalized communities, and climate vulnerable nations must be meaningfully included in decision-making processes. Values requires that our actions be grounded in equity, justice, transparency, and shared humanity. Excellencies, transformation requires more than policy. It demands collective will. It demands courage to act, humility to listen, and commitment to cooperate. For Sri Lanka, climate action represents both a development imperative and an opportunity to reshape our future. By aligning national priorities with global cooperation, we can move from vulnerability to resilience, from fragmentation to partnerships, and from ambition or to action. Multilateralism can mobilize finance, transfer technology, strengthen capacity, and nurture solidarity. It's a moral commitment to one another. Let us reaffirm to move forward as partners committed to just, inclusive, and truly sustainable future for generations to come. Thank you very much.
Your Excellency, thank you very much. I think it was particularly important that you highlighted some very interesting aspects. Trust, obviously, very important. Meeting commitments, equally important. But I think, thank you for drawing attention to everyone here, that we need to undertake resilience and adaptation. We are going to face it. That's a reality. And we've spent a great deal of time, rightly so, on trying to see what can we do on one side of the equation. But the other side is equally important. Coming from a country which is an island nation, you understand that perhaps best among us all. And thank you very much for drawing attention. I now call upon His Excellency, the Honorable Minister from the Maldives. Sir, you have the floor. I don't know about domestic politics at your country, sir, but I want to tell you that one of your former presidents was someone who, if he was sitting here, he would still be the only one taking the floor here. For a variety of reasons, a friend of all of us, a friend also of this place, but still someone active in climate. My understanding is, individual being on one side, it's the Maldivian activism on climate which has been particularly important in terms of getting the entire issue of small island states, the entire issues that bedevil them, and bringing that to the table. We look forward to hearing from you and are particularly honored that you could join us here today in Delhi. Thank you, Your Excellency.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind words. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor to address this distinguished assembly on behalf of the Republic of Maldives. We gather at a moment when the imperative for revitalized, inclusive and responsive multilateralism has never been greater, not only to uphold our shared values, but also to confront the most pressing global challenges of our time. Multilateralism must be a force for hope and collective action. It must rebuild trust, demonstrating that cooperation can deliver tangible results for people and planet. Yet around the world, we see fragmentation, unilateralism, and delays in fulfilling commitments. This has eroded confidence, cooperation, and weakened our ability to respond to crises that no country can solve alone. For the Maldives, multilateralism is not an abstract ideal. It is a matter of survival. As a low-lying country with more than 99% of our territory comprised of oceans, rising sea levels, the sea level could rise a meter by the end of this century. With significant economic and social impacts, this includes risks to natural assets vital to our economy, such as coral reef, tourism, and fisheries. To rebuild trust, multilateral cooperation must be transparent, inclusive, and equitable. Commitments without implementation weaken faith in global governance. Those who have contributed most to the global emission must shoulder appropriate responsibility, while those most vulnerable, like the small island states, must be supported with accessible, predictable, and primarily grant-based finance. In our experience in Maldives, international cooperation has delivered measurable results. Through partnerships, we have strengthened coral reef monitoring. We also pursue innovative solutions to ocean current and other novel renewable energy solutions. Particularly for implementation of very successful projects at the moment, particularly I would like to highlight the Asian Development Bank and the World Bank for their assistance in progressing our ongoing projects. To revitalize multilateralism, we must also reform its institutions. Many global governance structures were established in a different era and must evolve to reflect the realities of the 21st century. Decision-making must be inclusive and representative, providing meaningful voice and influence for developing countries, small island states, and communities on the front lines of climate impacts. Financing mechanisms must be fair, flexible, and responsive to urgent needs. When the Maldives sought support for climate adaptation, procedural hurdles slowed projects critical to our coastal resilience. Such barriers must be addressed through streamlined, equitable processes. Equally, multilateral systems must integrate sustainably across the sectors. Trade, technology, finance, health, and infrastructure frameworks must align with the Sustainable Development Goals, ensuring coherence rather than fragmentation. This is central to unlocking investment, innovation, and collective action that deliver real outcomes. Hope and solidarity must be translated into collective action. In the Maldives, this principle drives our national policy and partnership. Through international cooperation, we have advanced floating solar, enhanced marine protected area networks, such as the Maldives Resilient Reef Ecosystem and Economy for the Future program. These examples include that hope with action is insufficient. We must deepen partnerships across governments, civil society, the private sector, and youth. This collaborative spirit must extend beyond rhetoric to joint investment, shared innovation, and accountability for delivery. We must also invest in institutional capacity, like Maldives, to effectively plan, implement, and scale solutions. Multilateralism must support capacity building that is context-specific and durable, empowering national ownership and long-term resilience. Distinguished delegates, multilateralism is more than a diplomatic mechanism. It is a humanity's collective promise, a promise to protect people, environment, and future generations. If we honor the promise, we can rebuild trust, drive meaningful reform, and transform hope into impact. Let us choose courage over complacency, cooperation over fragmentation, and action over delay. Let us ensure that multilateralism is not only a force for hope, but a force that delivers sustainable development, resilience, and justice for all. Together, we rise to the challenge, keep the promise. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Thank you. And thank you for drawing our attention to this very important and critical aspect of what's happening through global warming, climate change, the rise of sea levels. Today in the world, there's a great deal of discussion in newspapers and elsewhere about the Arctic. Has anyone paid attention to the fact that a melt in the Arctic region, what it would do in terms of sea levels across the world, and what could it do to low-lying countries? Has anyone thought of these national security imperatives that guide many in the ways in which they think of this particular matter? Of course, geopolitics subsumes everything else, and we know that. But having said all this, Mr. State Secretary, may I please request you, sir, to a hall which you say you are very familiar with, perhaps in a different setting. But I want to ask you not only to take the floor, but in a sense take the floor for both your country and for the continent of Europe, which has led in an understanding of climate change and what we need to do. And let me draw attention to everyone in this room to a fact which we in India tend to forget and look the other way, which is that in the last 30-odd years of climate change being at the top of the global agenda, the Europeans actually have delivered. Please look at in terms of their greenhouse gas emissions, in terms of the per capita emissions, in terms of a lot of action that has been done. And there should be no doubt that Germany and Sweden, the two countries here, have both contributed in immense measure in terms of both regulation and in terms of technological developments. Your Excellency, honored to have you with us. The podium is yours.
Thanks, Ambassador. Dear colleagues here on the podium, dear colleagues and friends here in the room, happy to be here. First of all, congratulations to the Silver Jubilee of the World Sustainable Summit here in Delhi. Really pleasure to be here in this room again. Look, a couple of years, let's say 10 years ago, I even wouldn't have understood what the headline of multilateralism as a force of hope would mean. Now I understand. The world has changed tremendously. Multilateralism for some countries, luckily only a few, is not a priority. On the contrary, they are attacking it. As you addressed my country and Europe, and I'm happy here to be among many countries from many continents are committed to multilateralism. And actually, thinking about it seriously, we have no other choice. Even children could understand that focus on your own country will not solve the global challenges. And we were speaking about climate. Thanks for the applause you were spending to us in Europe. Still, we have some steps to go. But it's more than that. This year we have all three Rio conferences, the one on climate in Antalya together with Australia, the one on biodiversity in Yerevan, and the one on desertification, highly underestimated in its relevance, by the way, the CCD in Mongolia. And it's also beyond the green agenda, the global environmental agenda. We are only 4 years away from 2030, our wonderful 2030 agenda on sustainable development. We are still lacking behind on fighting hunger and poverty, providing access to education, ensuring gender equality, reducing the huge gap in wealth, and at the same time looking at all the global public goods and a joint family. So we are not in a position to criticize if a country decides to leave whatever institution in the world. It's not desired by us, but every country can decide. What we criticize and what we do not accept is that one country is putting pressure on other countries. And let me name the organization, it's the IMO. What we saw there was a huge majority among countries with very, very different perspectives, agreeing that we have to decarbonize our shipping lines. And there was already a majority for it, and it was under attack. It was under attack to single countries, small island countries, as you mentioned correctly, being anyway under the highest pressure with global climate change. Also to individuals to change the position of their countries. This is something we cannot accept. This is something that destroys the world community in its essence. Ladies and gentlemen, there is another aspect that I want to mention in my brief address here. And that is, this is organized by Terry. And Terry is about knowledge. It's about fact-based. And I've been many times when I visited Delhi to Terry, and I always enjoyed the excellence and the immense know-how at this think tank. That is shared with other think tanks in the world. But this is also under threat. And for very good reasons, our Brazilian friends created in Belém at the Climate COP an alliance against misinformation and fake news in the field of global public goods. We luckily joined. We have to fight against it, because if you don't have the substance, what is right and what is wrong, if leaders in the world can lie whatever they want, then there is no basis for true multilateralism, and honestly, there is no basis to make progress for the world. So finally, coming to the end, you mentioned that I've been here in this room before at the last Raisina dialogues. The next will come. Those two dialogues, the one here organized by Terry, stands for fact-based progress, and the one on Raisina standing for multilateralism. This is a room where friends gather. And just to define what, in my view, are friends. Friendship is not defined that you share the same opinion. Friendship is defined that you are able to listen, that you try to understand, that you value the argument of others, and that you are driven by the joint endeavor to make the world a little bit better. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Mr. State Secretary. Thank you very much. And thank you for that very important, let me say, drawing attention to this room. And I want to say something very interesting here, which he said. You know, it's not that I won't join. You're welcome. You're welcome to go to another place. But that I won't let you join. And that's the critical issue. I don't want to take names, but all of you who are stakeholders understand what is happening. And the Honorable State Secretary was quite clear. But we, those who are vulnerable and those who understand that climate, atmosphere, the earth is not waiting for our geopolitics and our economics. What do we do? And I think it demands that we work together. Indramani, if you don't mind, may I ask the State Secretary from Sweden to speak so that we have this little continuity. And then we'll switch back to multilateralism, which you are a champion of, and to what's happening in our region. So may I please request His Excellency, Mr. Matthias Frumerle, the Climate Ambassador of Sweden. Yes, sir, you can take whichever side, to please also address the gathering. Thank you.
Thanks so much, and thanks also from my side for this opportunity to be part of this conversation. Indeed, a highly relevant topic you have chosen for us all to be providing reflections on multilateralism as a force of hope. A very timely topic indeed for climate action and for sustainable development. And for Sweden, and I think for many of us here today, multilateralism is indeed in our DNA. It is through multilateralism and collaboration that we jointly can address common challenges and build prosperity globally. And as a climate diplomat, the COP process and the UNFCCC is naturally at the heart of what we try to achieve in terms of our efforts to accelerating the green transition globally. But having said that, I think also it's fair to recognize that COP30, our most recent COP meeting, didn't quite deliver the kind of results that we from a Swedish and European perspective wanted to see. And as a result of that, our assessment is that mitigation outcomes at the COP meetings might be difficult to achieve also going forward. And as the transition soldiers on globally, opposition to outcomes that can be perceived as accelerating the transition and thereby impacting the economic interest of fossil fuel exporters will most likely to be continued. And we, from a Swedish perspective, we have therefore concluded that we will need to work more consistently also across other platforms which are available to accelerate the transition, while of course at the same time also embracing any kind of attempt we can see to reform the UNFCCC process to facilitate implementation at the country level, building on the agreed outcomes at the global level. So whilst at the same time we were looking to work across these other platforms, also making sure that the UNFCCC is fit for purpose to support us all in delivering the kind of outcomes that we agree at the global level. So our attempt from a Swedish perspective to revitalize climate multilateralism will therefore aim at strengthening action also at 3 other platforms which we see as complementing the UNFCCC. The first one would be all the other international organizations which we have available where we can advance climate action. The UN system at large, the multilateral development banks, but increasingly also organizations such as the World Health Organization, the World Trade Organization, and not to forget also the International Labour Organization, where climate action should be, and maybe already is, very high on the agenda, and where we can highlight the kind of solutions that we know are available to accelerate the transition. The second platform available for us is all the various international climate initiatives which we see have been emerging over the years. And I'm happy to see the Climate and Clean Air Coalition being represented here, one of the organizations that Sweden was part of forming many years ago now. But we also have the Leadership Group for Industry Transition, which we launched together with India in 2019, which now comprises some 20 countries and equal number of companies coming together to find solutions to in the hard-to-abate sectors, or working specifically with the transition of steel and cement, for example. But we also just recently assumed the chairmanship of something we call the Global Carbon Pricing Challenge, launched by Canadian friends a couple of years ago. Where we are encouraging more and more countries to adopt carbon pricing measures. When we ask the Swedish business community what they would see as a single most efficient policy tool to accelerate the transition, the answer is consistently carbon pricing. So the more that we can deploy those kind of mechanisms, we believe we can also spur the innovation of new kinds of technologies to help us in the transition. But just to mention a couple of others as well, we have the Beyond Oil and Gas Alliance, which was launched by Danish friends a couple of years ago, but also the First Movers Coalition, which brings together companies who make purchase commitments, which builds the market and creates demand for the new kinds of solutions and technologies across a range of different sectors. So while we, from a Swedish perspective, focus on maybe 10 to 15 of these various initiatives, we're a member of some 150, so quite a large number of these initiatives, ranging from a declaration we have signed to an organization with a secretariat with conducting various regular types of meetings as well. Already before COP29, we put forward proposals from the Swedish side that we wanted to bring all the sort of the force and the power in these initiatives more closer to the UNFCCC process, so that the results in the initiatives could also be reflected in the outcomes of the COP meetings. And we were very happy to see that the Brazilian COP presidency, ahead of COP30 then, presented sort of a structural reform of the so-called action agenda in the UNFCCC, whereby all these initiatives were invited to present their results, and hopefully that could also be taken forward now by the COP31 presidency by Turkey and Australia. So we see these platforms as both sort of platforms to highlight the kind of solutions that we know are available, but also then providing results and presenting results, complementing and hopefully providing inspiration to the UNFCCC process as a whole. And the fourth and final platform is our bilateral collaboration with countries across the world globally. With India, we also have something we call the Industry Transition Partnership, and where we work, of course, not only as Sweden, but also together with European partners in accelerating the kind of solutions that we know are available. For example, this year we're focusing very much on NDC implementation. Now that the NDCs, most of them, are in place, we want to strengthen collaboration with partners to ensure that we can focus on NDC implementation. Just last year also, my Minister for Climate and Environment, together with a colleague, the Minister for Trade and Development, they signed a letter which we shared basically with all countries, saying these are solutions that Swedish business actors can provide across sectors such as energy, industry, transport, waste management, and food systems, helping us all to raise ambition in the NDCs, but now, of course, focusing more on the implementation. Here again, I think the EU-India FTA was mentioned. That would also provide us, in this particular case, with an excellent platform, again, to highlight these kind of solutions and make sure that we deploy them in our respective economies. Linking back also maybe just, if I may, and I'll finish by that, the link to the AI summit last week, and bringing together the force of digitalization together with the green transition, highlighting the kind of solutions which are sort of meeting both of those ends. So to finish off, I think this just sort of give you a bit of a glimpse of how we, from a Swedish side, try to revitalize the multilateral cooperation and showing that solutions are available, and by working together, we can unleash that kind of power to build our new resilient economies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. And may I say, on behalf of TERI, a very big thank you to Sweden for always being a strong partner of TERI. I see Ambassador Arne Volta also sitting there. Thank you very much. You mentioned Belem. Let me leave a thought with you. In my understanding, and I fully understand where you come from, the word disappointment. In some senses, many people would say much of action on climate change has been disappointing. But on the other hand, would you agree that perhaps deftly playing the geopolitics which is prevailing in the world, we continued? This is somewhat different to what happened, what the State Secretary mentioned to you in IMO, and had that happened, can you imagine what we would have been talking about? We have here a Supreme Court lawyer sitting amongst us. You would imagine that why in India are we going beyond just activists? Why are people in the legal fraternity? Jitendra, thanks for being here. And of course, I'm very delighted to see Benito and Anju and see the head of UNEP here and so on, and former secretaries of environment. But the fact is that people are understanding that you need to do action and implementation. And perhaps the Brazilians managed to get this fact right, understood, sir, that let's move it on. And in any case, the next COP, sir, is in your geographical region. Most of you won't understand, but the way the UN system is structured, Turkey, Israel, and a few others are in this wonderful state. They decide in which group they want to be in, with the West Europeans, or they want to be with the Asians, and so on. It allows them that. So you have some flexibility, sir, and we count on your strength. Because why? We as India, we are vulnerable. We need to do climate action. We will do what we can locally, but we certainly need global action with us. Ambassador Indramani Pandey, you've been India's ambassador to Geneva. You know what all of this means. And now you're heading BIMSTEC, the Regional Cooperation Organization which binds all of us in this part of the world, along with the entire Bay of Bengal area, vulnerable countries. You sit in Bangladesh, which has been a country which at the UNFCCC has been a major champion of action on finance, on adaptation, in a sense, trying to keep the focus on things which for many larger economies, this mitigation-based mindset is a little differently addressed. We'd really like to hear from you and hear what the organization, what you personally feel, and what are your understandings, because I'm sure we'll all be enriched by what you have to say. The podium is yours, sir. From here, from the podium, whichever way you want to. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Distinguished panelists, distinguished audience, a very good evening to you all. It's great pleasure to participate at this World Sustainable Development Summit, and I'm grateful to Terry for inviting me to represent the regional organization which belongs to this our part of the world. I'm a strong advocate of multilateralism for two reasons. One, I represent an organization which embodies the spirit of multilateralism, BIMSTEC, and also for over 10 years, I have been practitioner of multilateralism in different roles and capacities as an Indian diplomat. And I strongly believe that, as the title says, multilateralism is indeed a force for hope and impact, particularly to realize some of the sustainable development goals and also to address our security concerns. WSDS is actually an example of multilateralism in action, as was also India AI Impact Summit, which brought together more than 100 countries and more than thousands of delegates working together to find a solution for AI challenge. Multilateral institutions continue to embody hope and aspirations of the international community for collective action. In spite of recent setbacks, and our other speakers have spoken about that, multilateral institutions continue to enjoy the support of a large number of countries, except a few. Why it is so? Because multilateralism is an essential tool available to us to forge international cooperation. It's not an option. There is no alternative to it, because there are certain global developmental and security challenges which no nation can alone deal with. And that's why we need to work together, and we have been working together. Also, for developing countries and many small countries, multilateralism is a preferred means for global engagement because it's inclusive in nature and it provides equal opportunities to all the countries, irrespective of their size and capability, to engage in conversation and try to find solutions which are acceptable to all. Of course, that's why, because there are so many countries working together, at times there are delays in finding solutions. But once we reach a solution, then it has the support of all the countries of the world, which then enables us to implement those solutions. Multilateralism has actually underpinned what we call global governance and rules-based order. Because when we talk about rules, what are we referring to? We are not only referring to treaties and conventions which have been negotiated multilaterally, but also global norms, rules, and regulations which are agreed together by a number of countries working together day and night. So if we have what we call international rules-based order, although now that is under stress, it's because of multilateral processes and institutions which work together to build that order brick by brick. There is a criticism of multilateralism which is very valid, that it has not always been able to deliver. But we should not judge the success of multilateralism only on one basis, that it has not been able to deliver the way we wanted it to deliver. And that's why the idea of reforming multilateral institutions is very valid. We need to reform them, the processes, the mechanisms, the way negotiations are held, the way agenda is defined. But we need all these institutions to continue to work for benefit of us. And here I would like to bring that multilateralism can take different forms. We always, when we think about multilateralism, we think about global multilateralism, the UN organizations, the international organizations, whether based in Geneva or Vienna in other parts of the world. But regional multilateralism is also a very powerful alternative where countries of a region come together, define their collective goals and work together to achieve some of those goals. The very same agendas which global institutions are dealing with globally, regional organizations deal with them at regional level. And in my view, they are more efficient and more effective because we have a small number of countries working together. It's easy to build consensus, it's easy to find convergences, and also it's more easy to devise plans that can work on the ground. And that is where I would like to introduce BIMSTEC, because it's an organization which belongs to us, India and 6 of our neighbors, but not very well known. BIMSTEC was created in 1997 to bring South Asia and Southeast Asia together. That was the time when countries like India and other countries in South Asia were looking up to Southeast Asia. And similarly, in Southeast Asia, there was a desire to connect more with South Asia. So BIMSTEC conceptualized that idea to create an organization which will work on the ground based on shared interests and priorities of the member states. India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka and Thailand were founding members. Later, Myanmar joined, as also Nepal and Bhutan. So together we have 7 members now, and we have a very vast agenda comprising 17 to 18 sectors. We have sectoral mechanisms for cooperation. We have core mechanisms for decision making. And we work together in negotiating agreements, conventions. We have action plan in different sectors of cooperation. And let me mention here, we have environment and climate change as a distinct sector, as also energy and disaster management. These 3 sectors relate together because they deal with different aspects of the same challenge that we have been discussing here. BIMSTEC has, as a non-political organization, continued to function, forge cooperation on the ground, because we have not been impacted by political changes either happening globally or happening within our members. That is the commitment of our member states, that will continue to work together irrespective of political changes within the member states or outside. And that's why I believe that BIMSTEC, which embodies the spirit of multilateralism, provides example to other regions also, that when they come together on a defined agenda to work together, they can successfully achieve the goals that they set out to be. And that's why I would like to now go back to the theme that yes, multilateralism does represent a force for hope, a force for collective action, a force to deal with some of the challenges that we cannot deal with alone. And in spite of the challenges that multilateralism is facing today, we have no other alternative if we have to deal with the challenges of global nature, whether we are talking about transnational security issues like terrorism, whether we are talking about pandemics, and we saw the impact of pandemics when we had to confront COVID, or we're talking about climate change, of course, where the impact is absolutely global in nature and no country alone can deal with them. With these words, I thank you all again for your kind attention. It's a pleasure speaking here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary General. Thank you very much for highlighting that plurilateralism does have a role, perhaps local leading to global solutions. And that's important in its own way. Tom, thank you for drawing my attention to that particular fact. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have a short conversation, about 40 odd minutes on this. I'd said you are part of this show here today, at least on this panel. So if any of you have questions, which you just say can't wait, you can't catch these people after this is over. Yes, sir, of course, the secretary will say first. One more question we can take. If there's anyone. If no one, you'll hear us.
Okay, shall I? Oh, sorry.
Sir, please.
Okay. I am
Introduce yourself, sir.
I
Very
am
quickly.
Deepak Gupta. I was secretary MNRE way back 15 years ago. It was a different world then. And I started the National Solar Mission. And I'm provoked to make this comment by the statement made by our distinguished colleague from Germany that 10 years ago, you did not understand what multilateralism meant. And you do it now. But let me come from the general to a very specific thought, which I want to leave with you. Over these 15 years, a lot of commitments have been made, mostly not met. Today, we have reached a situation where there is one country which is walking out of the climate action, and there is another country which completely dominates much of the means of decarbonization in the power sector, which is manufacturing of solar, batteries, and the supply of essential minerals. Since the time I was secretary, I have been arguing, pleading for the rest of the world, that is Germany, led by Germany in Europe, Japan, Australia, and other countries, including India, to get together to solve this problem of manufacturing of solar and batteries across the chain and ensure the materials for it. It hasn't happened. And if it does not happen, we will not be able to deliver the goods. So I'm leaving this special thought. Will something happen now when it is becoming so important? And action must be there. Action, not talk.
Thank you, sir. Walk the talk is very important. Young lady, you wanted to ask a question. That's the only other one. Please go ahead. Mr. State Secretary, in the meantime, why don't you answer this question? This is the burning question in the Global South. Talk, but no act by the North.
Well, I think it's a little bit more differentiated. And let me say first, because also the minister mentioned the finance and what has been promised. I can say here that Germany always delivered on what we have promised and what we saw as a fair share of global finance. And we will continue to do so. But I also, as we are speaking about finance, need to say we are in our public also under pressure. The poison of unsolidarity is going around the world, and it's also affecting our societies, asking questions, why are you sending money to Africa, to Latin America, to India, whereas these countries should care about themselves? We don't share this view, but I just want to share with you that we have to be strong and that we need to give good answers why we are doing it as we are doing it. And I think there are many answers around. On the cooperation on the solar, I can mention for the last 4 years, I was not responsible for environment. I was responsible for development cooperation. And 2 years ago, I met your successor, one of your successors, the secretary at MNRE. And my proposal was to have a joint conference of India, global conference in Germany, to enhance private investments in solar manufacturing. And that was done at the RE Invest, a wonderful conference organized here. And I think we are making really progress. I met together with MNRE, the secretary today, to launch an agri-photovoltaic facility. So we are doing what we are talking about. We walk the talk, but we have to be faster altogether.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Let me just make a little point. You made a very good reference in terms of national security perspectives, and I think people like me understand that very well. But this business of climate fatigue is also something that we in the developing world need to understand as to what is happening in the global north. There's also this issue of not just shirking, but in terms of shifting responsibilities. But maybe some other day we shall talk about all that. Somebody there wanted, not you, sir, if you don't mind. There's only one question. There was a lady there who said.
Yes.
Next
I'm
time,
Ruchika. My question is specifically to the Excellency from Nepal. You highlighted that there have been broken promises and, that there has been hope and the results have not been delivered and implemented the way you wanted it to be to create an impact in your country. Could you elaborate on the specific interventions that you as a small country would have wanted the global north or the policy makers to specifically deliver to you?
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you. And one last question, maybe Jatinder on your part. What does the ICJ... can you hear me? Can you hear me? Sorry, ma'am. No more. We've got to have a conversation with these people now. Jatinder, I'll ask the question on your
I'll
behalf.
be very brief.
Yeah, please, the ICJ.
I'll be very brief.
ICJ.
Okay, so I'm a lawyer in the Supreme Court here in India. I'm also a Canadian lawyer and an Africa lawyer. So that's my brief introduction. So I think majority of the countries 2 years back actually passed a General Assembly resolution and sought an opinion from ICJ. So ICJ today has given you the principles and the rules, so to say, as we all are rule-based organizations and rule-based countries. Particularly to the secretary who talked about the IMO issues, it seems that these organizations don't seem to be following the principles. See, I look at precedents and rules every single day. So here is a precedent which has been set not by one tribunal, 3 international tribunals. Why countries are not able to adhere to them? So
thank you, Jatinder. Thank you. International law, unlike national law, requires states to be able to implement them, and we know what's happening on all of that. We have Oves here, former UNFCCC Secretary General, Executive Secretary. He'll possibly answer that. We have Tom here, who says that he fathered the Paris Agreement, and these guys will answer the question. We have Kira also, but we have 2 of my friends here who are from the sustainability area. Let's go a little beyond just the climate negotiation. Patricia, we'd be falling in our duty if we didn't ask you to speak now, but unfortunately you have only 2 minutes from there itself. So can we pass that on? Sustainability.
Sustainability, I think, and I would posit for this conversation here, can be a way to revive multilateralism. And I say that because I think we're at a moment, and it's been reflected in the comments on this panel, where multilateralism has been called into question. It's been said here that this was a system that was formed at a time when many of the voices around the planet did not have their place to a sufficient degree in that conversation. That has been commented here and widely, I would say. So I think now we're at a moment where we see a shifting of global power. We see greater multipolarity emerging in the world. And we see countries that are emerging powers being also countries which are the most affected by climate change. So this is a moment where we need to bring a stronger focus on sustainability in international relations. I think, we can take the words that Prime Minister Modi left with this forum yesterday at the inauguration and the message he sent, which was that protecting the earth is not a policy choice, it's a duty, and really seek to place that at the center of international relations, which unfortunately have been diverted to a focus on security, a focus on affordability. These are all very real issues, but those cannot be resolved either without staying within the boundaries of what is a sustainable planet. So I would say that refocusing our attention on sustainability, and I think India has a strong role to play in bringing that more centrally into the global conversation.
Dr. Fuller, thank you very much. And thank you for reminding us what we believe is our ancient civilizational ethos. We have one earth, and it's our responsibility to ensure that it remains good and habitable for us, the human beings. It's not just the planet, but it's us on the planet. Professor Biermann, as a professor of global sustainability and its governance, Let's hear a few minutes from you. 2-3 minutes, sir, because we're really running out of time. On what should we do? What's gone wrong, we all know. What should we do?
Well, thank you so much, first of all, for the invitation. It's a great... It's on, yeah, good. Thank you so much for the invitation. It's a great pleasure being here. And I must say also for me, it's a very special moment because it's the second time that I'm speaking here at the World Sustainable Development Summit. I've been speaking here 23 years ago. And I'm a great fan. I'm really excited of the possibility to be back here now in Delhi and with the Terry community. I must say, since we had these discussions in 2003, not much has improved, unfortunately. It got even worse. If you look at sustainability governance, we have talked about climate, we talked about the SDG, everything is kind of going down. And also, I must say, global governance. I believe, to drive this discussion a little bit forward, that we have to move away maybe from this idea that everything has and must be universal. I believe that the old belief after the end of the Cold War that everything is universal, the belief that we always can work together with all of us, that we always have linear progress, that these times are ending also because of one country that has not been mentioned but referred to quite often. The future, I believe, for the next couple of years will be plurilateral governance, meaning governance not with all countries, but with many countries, like-minded countries, progressive countries that want to move forward. That, I think, is the future. The problem is we have a planetary crisis, a planetary emergency. And how can we match this with smaller coalitions of countries, plurilateral coalitions of countries in a planetary emergency? How can we match it? And this is a great challenge for the research community. It's a great challenge for lawyers, for example, especially the international lawyers. And I think it's a great opportunity also of working together. And I would be very excited also to work together more with Terry. I had some discussions already in the corridors to have more research activities with Terry researchers and my colleagues at Utrecht University and in the International Earth System Governance Research Alliance to work together jointly, identify opportunities for plurilateral governance in a United Nations that is still very important, but that has to grow with a plurilateral challenge. I think that is very, very important, and I'm looking forward to have more collaboration. I will also be here for dinner. For anybody who wants to check out and discuss with me, I would be very excited. Thank you so much.
Professor Biermann, vielen Dank. Thank you very much for this. Of course, coalitions of the willing. But at the moment, I think, aren't we looking at 193 minus 1? That's a rather large coalition of the willing. Mantriji, there was a question addressed to you. What would you like the world to do for you?
Actually, thank you for raising this question. There are two parts of in her question. One, it's a broken promises. So what are they? Like generally, the countries that promised to contribute in climate finance, like for example, the 100 billion per year, that was not met. So we would have done, much more in this climate, the adaptation, resilient practices, if that promises as met. Otherwise, like we have been facing irreversible losses and damages because of these lost promises. So that was the thing that was I was going to highlight. I had highlighted. The other thing, what Nepal has done, what actions we took. So despite of our size of the economy, we have a lot of needs. As I mentioned, that we're aiming to graduate from the least developed. But we have many needs. But despite of that, we're trying to protect our forest. We have done tremendous work, and we have started like selling our carbons recently from the forest. So we have transitioned from fossil fuel to EVs. As you might have noticed that last year of the total import, we contributed 73% EVs. That has made an international headlines as well. So we're also converting renewable energy in many fields, from cooking practices to our transportation as well. So we're trying to bring more EVs in our public transportation. So these are some of the areas that we are trying. At the same time, we're trying to protect our biodiversities, because as you know that despite the small size as compared to the neighboring country, our biodiversity, the density is quite high. So we have a lot to do there, but we're trying to collaborate. And one thing I want to highlight here. Just yesterday with the Honorable Minister of India, we did a conservation, biodiversity conservation the MOU to share our information, intelligence, capacity building, and the knowledge sharing, because we have people living who are like indigenous, marginalized, frontiers, in the last mile. People are living in the diverse this Himalayan range. So they are the real people who are close to the vulnerable nature. But they are getting high impacts, and so we were trying to highlight, put our voice for a fair and just share of this situation. Thank you.
Mr. Minister, thank you. As you can make out, we in Terry feel very connected to the Himalayan range, which is why the Him Connect, which is the big exhibition here, but it has also something to do with the ethos with which we think, and why we think the Himalayas are not only the soul and the sort of mother-giving source of power and everything to our civilization, but also critically important because of these glaciers and what's happening at the glaciers. Obviously, let me turn to you. Interestingly, the UNFCCC hasn't been mentioned by anyone. We're talking about multilateralism in the context of sustainability. It was mentioned that there was a kind of disappointment. I tried to push back, but that's my view. I want to ask you, what are one or two things that can be done to keep multilateralism in the climate dimension, UNFCCC in its centrality, as being the beacon of hope? And I say this to you asking the specific question, that let's say you're a big partner organization, the World Bank, etc., without any doubt, have sidestepped the entire issue of sustainability and climate. I'm not saying they're wrong. I perhaps think that they're right on employment, on infrastructure, and so on and so forth. But what do you think we can be done? Let me give you 2 or 3 minutes, because we want to take some more questions to enliven the proceedings here.
Well, thank you very much, Ambassador. It's a great pleasure for me to be here and to share this panel with such distinguished panelists here. I've been out of UNFCCC for a couple of years and seeing things the way things have evolved over the last year or two, and especially in the last year, with the United States' position in climate change, in multilateralism, in global affairs and international law. It is disheartening. But at the same time, I strongly believe that that is what provides the motivation, the energy, the determination for the rest of us, for the rest of the countries to do more, to continue doing the right thing in terms of implementation of the Paris Agreement. And there can be different views about it, but in my view, Paris Agreement is still working, it is still functional, it's still delivering. Without Paris Agreement, we'd probably be 3 or 4 even centigrades higher than what we have reached right now. We've probably crossed 1.5 degrees, which is disastrous, which is terrible. But it's a question of looking at it whether glass half full or half empty. So I think we need to keep that in focus and continue to doing the right thing, and for the right reasons. United States pulling out of Paris Agreement, and this time actually also UNFCCC, it's a big shock. It's a seismic shock to the climate regime, to the process. But that is what provides the motivation to change it, to reform it, to reimagine. And I think there are many initiatives around the world that are happening outside that system, including events like this. And I just came out of the another climate week on innovation happening here in Delhi. And the number of unicorns, number of innovative solutions that are being delivered, implemented around the world, and here, even next door, the things that we see, that these are extremely encouraging. Would that have happened without the realization and understanding of what is happening to the climate, to the environment, which has been brought forward by the agreements like Paris Agreement? So I remain hopeful. I think that is what we have to do, especially in times when there are big pushbacks, big seismic changes as we have experienced. So I think what is important is that we need to keep that focus, keep that North Star of 1.5 degree ahead of us, and keep working towards remaining within that limit.
Thank you, Oves. Thank you very much for drawing attention to the Paris Agreement. Tom Rivett-Carnac, you were senior advisor to the UN FCCC Executive Secretary when the Paris Agreement was signed. Let me leave with you a provocative question. Had we not had the Paris Agreement, continued with what was happening before that, the one would have been out, but things would have been fine. Now, by bringing in the one, you've resulted in all of this that people are talking about. Your colleague sitting to your left feeling that things are being disappointed. The one takes its own decisions. What can I say about it? So what do you have to say about it? What would be your answers on what we should do now?
Thank you, and I'm delighted to be here with so many ministers who are making such forceful defenses of multilateralism, which is wonderful to see. You made a comment earlier that we are now 193 minus 1, and I think that is a mischaracterization of the seriousness of the issue that we're in. It's easy for us to continue to think that multilateralism, as it previously functioned, can more or less continue to function in this existing form, but the absence of the US, as was demonstrated in Belém, is having a systemic impact on our ability to collectively come together, and I think the sooner we appreciate that, because it's not just the US, we're seeing this in other parts of the world. When the Paris Agreement was negotiated, and if I'm a father of the Paris Agreement, by the way, there are 100,000 parents, and I'm merely one of them. When the Paris Agreement was negotiated, climate was isolated from other geopolitical issues, which allowed us to make progress despite other rivalries. That's no longer the case, and that is the case across multiple different countries. So what needs to happen now is your question. And 2014, some of you may remember, at the Secretary General Summit, the idea of voluntary cooperative initiatives was launched, which was many of these coming together as plurilateral, multi-stakeholder alliances, where we can accelerate progress amongst groups that actually really want to move further and faster. And as was pointed out, those can evolve into becoming multi-stakeholder and multilateral if they're successful. However, since Paris, 590 of these initiatives have been launched, and only 120 have any tracking and monitoring. And every time we have another COP, 2 or 3 new ones are announced. Nobody really understands how they connect to previous ones. And we all get confused about some sense of progress happening, but not really knowing how that collectively adds together as part of a multi-stakeholder push. So I would say in these difficult geopolitical times, where we have a difficult diplomatic context, we need to defend multilateralism, as everybody here is doing, and I really appreciate the vision and the defense, but we also need to look at where there is momentum. And the economics is on our side. There are plenty of people, different stakeholder types who want to move forward, and we should acknowledge those initiatives and make them formally part of the UN process.
No, thank you very much, Tom. I think that's very important. It's not 193 minus 1, it's 193 minus 25% of the world, and perhaps still the most important geography in the world in terms of change, in terms of money, in terms of technology, and so on and so forth. Absolutely spot on. The UN FCCC becoming a showstop of this kind. 593 photo ops. We don't know what's happening. I see Benito Muller sitting here. He spent the last several years trying to tell us that we should center all the negotiations in Geneva, like the Conference on Disarmament, no exhibitions, none of this, what we call in India, tamasha, and we'll become much more serious. I don't know which way it goes, Benito. We'll have a look at what the global mood is on all of that. But we have you, Kira. Tom said something very interesting. He said it wasn't just the 25% of global GDP. But it's happening somewhere else. Obviously, he's not talking about either India or China or Brazil or anyone else. Who he's talking about, you know very well, and he's sitting next to you. Both of you know very well. We understand. And as I mentioned to you, this business of climate fatigue is not something that only I have conjured up. But it is certainly there in your country too. There are political forces which talk about it. And so we understand, coming from democracies, that there is a need to understand and assimilate political changes and political thinking and mold things in that direction. But let me ask you to speak very briefly, and we'll take a few rounds of questions. We still have about 15 minutes. What would you say is today Germany's big push on global climate agenda, and in terms of your efforts at both let me say, keeping multilateralism and that process alive and sound and kicking, but also in terms of global collaborative action on climate change, because you are a country of consequence.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be here and to have the honor to speak with you today. I'm not representing a government, so I'm not obliged to polite omissions.
Sure.
So let me speak frankly. The Trump administration is trying to destroy the international order. It has started to defund and destruct, as was mentioned with the IMO negotiations, many of the UN institutions. And we have at the same time the situation that Russia is blatantly violating international law. It may submit its bogus NDC on time, but its Russian war of aggression against Ukraine is shaking Europe. It's shaking the very basic of international law. So in Germany, we are feeling this grave attack on the international order. And the only consequence is to reform and unite. Otherwise, we may be replaced with another system that may be detrimental to those who need the system the most. The poor, the vulnerable, the marginalized, the women, those of you who will still be here for the golden jubilee of this conference. I want to ask you, when you think about the reform of the UN system and what risk landscape has to take into account, who of you thinks that the melting of the Greenland ice sheet will affect their security, will affect themselves? Maybe a show of hands? Okay, so relatively optimistic. Who of you thinks that if the Amazon rainforest in Brazil turns into a drier forest, into a savanna type, that it will affect them?
Yep.
So we are very far away from these places, but we are seeing these impacts. And when I started, and I was actually 14 years ago, a young visiting research scholar at TERI, when I started, these impacts, these high-scale impacts, they seemed very improbable, and their probability has risen dramatically. So these effects need to be taken into account when we think about reform of the UN system. It's not only about bureaucracy, it's not only about overheads, it's not only about efficiency, it's about which risks we need to take into account. And my hope is that the German government will do its part to place this on the international agenda. But you're right, there is climate fatigue, and domestic policies are not pointing in this direction. So there are some hope spots, and they come from the margins that you have rightly pointed out. They come more from the margins of the COP process, from the action agenda. It's the Tropical Rainforest Forever facility, for example, a new investment opportunity that may happen to unlock private investments through public investments. And there, again, we see the question, do we invest into our future, into a bioeconomy, or do companies invest into oil drilling in Venezuela? And these are the questions that we have to answer right now, and this is where climate and geopolitics are intersecting. Thank you.
Kira, thank you very much. Thank you for making us raise our hands for the right thing to do. Believe me, you said we are far away. Yes, but not in this crowd. We need to be mindful and understanding that what happens there impacts us just as what we do here impacts them. Thank you very much for this, because it is this particular thing which is particularly important. It's not just the global gatherings. Let me point out something to you all. Do you know, every year, a large number, 100 plus heads of state and government routinely meet on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly's general debate, sometimes in the last week of September. Do you know any other events in the world where large number of heads of state and government routinely meet? Let me tell you, other than a few commemorative ones for, let's say, the FAO's 50 years or something like that, the only place where people have come together are the UNFCCC's COPs. It can't be because the heads of state and government of the entire world, the United States including, doesn't know how important climate change is and this energy transition business. They know, which is why they come. which is why sustainability is important. Everybody in politics knows it. How they play it is a different matter altogether. And that's what we're trying to say here. And thank you, Kira, for telling us at least we need to remain committed. Excellent. There were more questions here. We've had everyone here ask questions. Yes, sir, we'll come to you. Someone at the back. Somebody was very vociferous. Young madam, you are there. Who else? So we'll take 2-3 questions. Thank you very much. Okay, 4. We have about 15-20 minutes. So let's start.
Yeah.
Please, ma'am. Please identify yourself
Yeah,
also.
yeah. I'm Anu Jindal. I'm an artist who works on environmental conservation.
Someone to address the question to.
Yeah, actually, anybody from the panel except for the minister from Nepal, because he's answered my question.
Thank you.
I would like some concrete examples of some success stories, either on a magna level or even on a micro level, which you can share, which can be really inspirational and directional for us. You know, some concrete examples. You know, if it's multilateralism, give an example of a success that has happened.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
in
Thank you, ma'am.
relation to your
We'll come to
country.
that. Good,
Yeah.
very good question. There are many people here who would be able to answer that. You, sir, wanted to ask a question. Please go ahead. Please identify yourself.
Thank you so much. My name is Madhav Karke. I come from Nepal. Excellencies and distinguished panelists, I think the question I'm asking is a very serious one. The country which we are referring to, United States, withdrew twice. It withdrew before and it has again withdrawn. What did we learn when the first time it withdrew, and how did we reform the UN system? Because we have been talking about UN system reform, I think for many years. And then the United States not only has not withdrawn, but out of 2 billion, it has paid with only about 200 million. So there is also another issue. So this type of situation where some member country withdraws, how do we react? And the theme of this session is transformation. We have heard the vision, collective vision. We have heard the voices, a lot of voices, but we haven't heard values. The nature, I think the protects if it is protected. That's what I heard. So the values, I think the nature gets is very poor, the undervalued. That's why nature is being degraded. So what can, 2 questions. How can the world learn from this time better than the first time? And how we can do better with themes like nature-based solution or valuing nature more inclusively, more comprehensively, and really finding local solutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karkeza. Very nice that you asked this question. Let me repeat these. 1 or 2 concrete places where all of this was a success. And secondly, what did we learn from the last time? So let me say this. Indramani, please go ahead, attempt which one you want to answer. And yes, sir.
To give some concrete examples of very recent successes in multilateral negotiations, while the United States withdrew from World Health Organization, it concluded a pandemic treaty, which was in negotiation for over a year and a half. So that was a big success because we would be better equipped once that treaty is implemented to deal with the future pandemics. To give you another example, World Intellectual Property Organization negotiated a Geneva Treaty on protecting genetic resources and traditional knowledge, which will be helpful for many developing countries. We negotiated during the same period a convention on cybercrime. We also negotiated an agreement on biodiversity. So these are some of the examples where multilateral organizations have continued to deliver, even though we can raise questions that whether those treaties and agreements are fully implemented and what concrete outcomes will be there. But at least there have been successful negotiations.
Thank you very much, Indramani. Of course, successful negotiations, they leave you with a template. You asked this question about what did we learn in 2014. They came back in 2017, didn't they? Or 2020 with a vengeance. We don't know. So domestic politics and what it does it really change the template? We don't know the answers. But my little observation on what you said, the withdrawal in 2016, and then the comeback in 2020. When the withdrawal happened or it didn't happen, the rest of us should have continued to do what we needed to do with an accelerated pace. Otherwise, if you sleep at your own peril. They came back. They have that ability. It's a tremendous economy, a tremendous society, and a tremendous abilities to be able to come back. And then it starts hurting, it starts becoming more difficult. But having said this, sir.
Thanks. Just two examples, one maybe on the macro side and one on the more micro side. I mean, on the micro side, I referenced the Industry Transition Partnership, which we have with India, launched 2 years ago, which now has resulted in 7 projects where we're co-collaborating on developing and innovating solutions across a range of sectors to accelerate the transition. So as one example on the micro side, I think on the macro side, the EU-India FTA is a great example of how we as two great economies are coming together, and hopefully by using the FTA to decarbonize our value chains across the two of our economies. And I think also sort of just referencing the gentleman's question here, it is up to all of us, and I think we all have these kinds of examples to highlight how we are advancing and collaborating to strengthen global collaboration, and not let's not get consumed by all the voices around us saying that multilateralism is dead, or that it's not functioning, because it is all up to us, all of us here, and all of our colleagues and peers in other countries as well, to show that indeed it works, and there are solutions out there, and there are countries who want to collaborate and strengthen collaboration to advance climate action and build prosperity globally. So keep raising our voices and encouraging everyone else to raise their voices as well.
Absolutely excellent. Professor Biermann.
I want to bring in also another topic. Like 2015, we have signed the Paris Agreement, but at the same time, we also signed the SDGs, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, which are also very, very important. And research has shown that the effectiveness is very much lagging behind. Only 35% of the goals are on track to being met or make worldwide progress. So we need reforms also in the SDG progress, and I think there are many ideas that we have to implement. For example, the SDGs are taking the same standards for all countries. Sweden is almost leading the pack, which is great for Sweden, but it also means that we maybe need to differentiate the targets and have more demanding targets for the high-income countries to make them really more sustainable over time. We also might want to make the SDGs more dynamic. They have all been agreed in 2015, and many of the problems that we have today were not known, were not prominent in 2015. We need a dynamic approach for the SDGs to make them really fit to our current times. And I want to come back to the point of the United Nations, which is very dear to my heart. I'm looking into these issues for the last 30 years. Of course, there are lots of important ideas and proposals of how we can make the United Nations better, more effective, more just, more inclusive. And I think we have to move forward with this agenda. And I believe we can move forward with this agenda also without the United States of America. There are so many different possibilities of how we can move forward. For example, for the legal technicians here in the room, there's Article 22 of the UN Charter, which means you can reform the Charter without involving the permanent members of the Security Council. So a plurilateral coalition could move forward, reforming the United Nations, introducing lots of changes that we might want to have in sustainability, justice, all these kind of issues, without waiting for the United States of America to agree. These options exist. There are ideas about democratizing of the United Nations. There are ideas about different bodies, like we have a World Tourism Organization, but we don't have a World Environment Organization. Why not? We could do it. Plurilateral agreements could be possible, and we don't have to wait for this one big country that is stepping out of international cooperation. So many ways are possible, and I think the summit is a fantastic opportunity to discuss these ideas, to move forward, to forge also new alliances, I must say also between the Europeans here and the Indian side, the Global South. I think that is the way of plurilateral cooperation that we need. And this is maybe a good starting point to move forward. And I'm very much grateful for the invitation for this summit. Thank you.
Professor Biermann, thank you very much. And thank you for highlighting and underlining the importance of moving ahead, continuing to work no matter what's happening on the coalition of the willing. After all, the UN is a coalition of the willing of 193 countries, isn't it? That's exactly it. However, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't appreciate what Tom said. This is not one. It's much more than one. Tectonic, very important and hugely contributing. And so therefore, Bring them in, certainly important. Keeping them focused on the same line, equally important. But you're right. Thank you for drawing attention to the fact that we've, in the climate discourse, missed out that this is about sustainable development. And this is the World Sustainable Development Summit. Patricia, I want you to have a few words on what do we have to do? Because the SDGs are not just the climate goal. And I don't want to talk about how it became that the climate goal is goal 13, etc. But what do we do about things which are otherwise critically important, including this business which interacts with climate, which is resilience, adaptation, the fact that you have people talk about AI. Now, a lot is talked about it becoming the engine of the future and the growth. Maybe. But for many, many people, there's this simplistic, straightforward danger of no jobs for the boys and the girls. So when we look at all this in terms of sustainability and sustainable development, what would you say are one or two things that we should do? Then I'll give the floor to the head of the UNEP regional office in Bangkok, who wants to answer your question that we should have a World Environment Organization. Get ready, please. Ma'am.
Okay, so thank you for the question, and two things perhaps that I think perhaps deserve more focus in the conversation. The question from the gentleman in the front row around nature, I think we should come back to that in terms of solutions. In fact, nature-based solutions, I think is an area which brings a great deal of hope in terms of how we build resilience to climate change. So this topic of nature-based solutions brings together both the multilateral topics we've been discussing, in the sense that two of these conferences this year, the climate and the biodiversity one, link together very much around this question of how we ally ourselves with nature to build resilience to climate change. And certainly IISD has done a lot of work to show how specific actions to protect nature and conserve nature. In fact, we've evaluated some 50 projects around the world to show that if you really take into account the comprehensive benefits that flow from protecting and restoring nature, these are highly cost-effective approaches to building resilience. And I think an interesting area of work is how we channel financing, including private sector financing, into nature-based solutions. And that is hard to do because it's around how you find that economic value and make it investable. But it is possible, and I think we are identifying some interesting ways to do that. Second example that I think perhaps we can bring into this conversation around creating the right incentives for climate action and for action to protect nature. So both the UNFCCC and the Convention on Biodiversity talk about the importance of aligning financial flows with our goals. In the Convention on Biodiversity, it's around Target 18 with respect to environmentally harmful subsidies. And this is an area where IISD has worked with Terry for years now. In fact, a long time ago, we began work here in India on how public financial flows can align behind the energy transition. So I think we've seen a lot of fantastic progress in India in reducing fossil fuel subsidies and tipping the incentives towards clean energy. And we're seeing great progress in India around the expansion of renewable energy. And I think that is a huge area for hope. If we're looking for areas for hope, it's the acceleration of take-up of renewable energy and getting the incentives right for that.
Thank you very much, Patricia. I'm going to ask the regional head of UNEP to speak. No, ma'am, I'm not asking you to answer the politically charged question for a UN civil servant on why not an international organization and just a fund and program. No, I'm not asking you. I'm simply asking you, what are you, your organization, along with BIMSTEC and others, doing in our region? And give you just 2 minutes on what are we doing in terms of building up resilience. The rest of the big issue on fossil fuels, energy transition, very big thing. What are we doing on resilience? Because I think it's a matter which is not a long time away as far as we are concerned. A few minutes, then ma'am, this thing is saying red, we need to stop.
Okay, thank you, sir. But sir, if I may, just 1 minute on UN80, because, Madhavji has asked, what is the UN doing? So there is a process with the UN Secretary General and his report, Shifting Paradigms United to Deliver. And within this, there is a work package 27 that really looks at structures within the environment. But I think the UN system, along with the member states, are really looking at where are the efficiencies, the different mandates, where should we be? So that process is going. And sir, UNEP in Asia Pacific, where are we focusing? So there's a big focus on, early warning, sort of strengthening early warning. So we're doing, early warning systems, building meteorological, hydrological systems in the Pacific, Timor-Leste, Maldives. So early warning for all is a big initiative. There's a lot on adaptation and resilience. The national adaptation programs that countries are doing, but that really is a framework to come with looking at building resilience. Resilience for nature, looking at the financial flows. And again, this is the sort of ecosystem-based adaptation. There's a lot of knowledge, but the scaling up is happening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you. That's particularly important. We're ending. I want to thank the entire panel. Every one of you, my personal gratitude and a very big thank you from Terry. We're very honored to have you. Some of you, for several times in the past, you've been with us. Particularly important. Always thank you for pointing out the North Star. It's important. Believe me, neither the planet, nor the atmosphere, nor us as physical creations are waiting for both the geopolitics and economics to come in place. Yes, welcome, please.
Yeah, just wanted to mention, you mentioned 193 countries, true, but in UNFCCC there are 197 parties. And there's one less, and there have been very good measures that have been taken when US went out in 2017, and I expect will happen again this year.
No, thank you very much, Ois. Yes, I am aware, but since UNFCCC was never mentioned here. Anyway, point I want to make to everyone, and Madhavji, this is further to what you said. We know the changing geopolitics. We feel it, we understand it, even sitting in a country which is exactly on the other side of a round globe. Having said all this, limiting ourselves to this thing which has long-term implications for us on the planet, let us understand that we are at a time when action is needed not only to continue but in an accelerated manner, because it's about our future, our children, and beyond that. And what do we need for that? Yes, we need good negotiations, we need good implementation and all of that. But most importantly, let me leave this thought with you. This has happened in the past, and I don't know what will happen after another 3 years. Let us just remember one thing. Those who have great abilities to bounce back. Those who don't let the time pass. Continuing with the work that you're doing, because it's important for you. Globally, it's important, but it's important for you locally. And so therefore, local and global is a very important construct. But let's remember that we must continue, and for all of us in the global south, India included, action on mitigation, certainly important, and we are doing all that. Renewable energy, solar, wind, in terms of nuclear, green hydrogen, all of those things, EVs and so on. But particularly important is building resilience. It's not just adaptation, but being resilient, because for all of us in the global south, it's an absolute reality that we come to. And so therefore, no matter what's happening, in our own interest, remain awoke, remain active, and remain focused, continuing with what you do. Certainly the globe itself, including the haves, will also see that they too have to do, and that's important. I want to thank you all very much. Thank you so very much once again. And Terry, the floor is back yours.
What a wonderful discussion. I mean, above geopolitics, the understanding is that we have to look at the collective good. And together we can move forward, we can grow, and we definitely lead the sustainability agendas forward. Thank you so much for joining us. To the respected ministries, keynote speakers, and distinguished panelists for a deeply substantive and forward-looking discussion. Today's conversation reminded us that multilateralism is not an abstract architecture. It is a living system. It depends on political will, institutional reforms, and above all, trust. If we are to meet the defining challenges of this century, cooperation cannot be optional. It must be deliberate, inclusive, and as Sir said, action-oriented. On behalf of TERI and the World Sustainable Development Summit, I extend our sincere gratitude to all the speakers and to each and every one of you who has been a part of this important dialogue today. Thank you so much, and can we have a huge, huge round of applause for our moderator and all the speakers that we had today. Thank you so much.
Please come forward. We have a photograph. Family photographs are a very good tradition.